The man accused of murdering his mother last night was expected in Douglas County Court this afternoon, but 33-year-old Nicholas Seda would not come out of his jail cell. First Alert 6's Philip Katafamo joins us live from the newsroom. Philip, what have we learned about this case?
Aaron, Seda was booked last night on multiple charges, including criminal homicide. Douglas County deputies responded to an armed disturbance near 91st and Camulet Road, where they found Seda's mother with stab wounds to her neck. Seda's mother, 65-year-old Diane Manousis, later died at the hospital after transport. Seda was taken into custody after being medically cleared. Now, according to the affidavit, Seda told the sheriff's deputy he, quote, stabbed her and that he was hearing voices and, quote, they were telling me to. He had self-inflicted injuries and was armed with a knife at the time of the arrest. Douglas County Sheriff Aaron Hansen says Seda was known to law enforcement as a high-risk individual. Sheriff Hansen says the 33-year-old had an extensive criminal record.
What is clear is that Mr. Seda has a very violent past, even a sexually violent past, and I would be surprised if his family was not aware of that. But the real tragedy is that we've lost an innocent woman in our county, and now it's the job of the sheriff's office to investigate it appropriately and in a quest for justice.
Seda was booked on charges for criminal homicide and use of a weapon to commit a felony. Now, investigators are working to learn Seda's relationship with his mother or why he was there that night. Again, Seda refused to show up for court today. He is in custody. He is expected to be in front of a judge for his next court appearance on July 3rd. In the newsroom, I'm Philip Katafamo, First Alert 6. Back to you, Aaron.
All right.